The city slept around him, but Amir's spirit was wide awake, attuned to the whispers of the divine that echoed in the stillness. And in that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that his greatest adventure, the adventure of awakening hearts and minds to the true nature of Allah's love, was only just beginning. As he walked home through the quiet streets, Amir's heart swelled with gratitude for the journey that had brought him here, for the lives he had been privileged to touch, and for the endless mystery of the divine that continued to unfold before him. He knew that whatever lay ahead, he would face it with an open heart and an unwavering faith in the transformative power of love. There were still so many souls yearning for a deeper connection, so many hearts longing to experience the boundless love he had encountered. With a deep breath, Amir switched off the lights and stepped out into the cool night air. As he locked the door behind him, he felt not the weariness of a long day, but the quiet excitement of a new beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new opportunities to share and to learn. It was a verse from the Quran that had taken on new meaning for him since his near-death experience. We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. These words, once a puzzle to be deciphered, now felt like a roadmap for the journey ahead. Amir realized that his work, their work, was far from over. It was a response to a calling that transcended any one religion or belief system, a calling to awaken the spark of the divine that resides within every human heart. As he turned to leave, Amir's gaze fell upon a simple calligraphy hanging on the wall. He thought about all the people out there who were wrestling with the same questions that had once tormented him. People searching for meaning, for connection, for a glimpse of the divine. In that moment, Amir felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over him. The work they were doing here, the conversations they were fostering, the bridges they were building, it was all part of something far greater than himself. Each volume represented a different facet of the human quest for understanding, a testament to the endless ways in which people have sought to make sense of their place in the universe. Pausing before a large window, Amir gazed out at the city sprawled before him. Lights twinkled in the distance, each one representing a life, a story, a soul on its own journey. The space, so recently filled with the buzz of conversation and the energy of shared discovery, now hummed with a different kind of energy, the quiet afterglow of spiritual communion. He walked slowly around the room, his fingers trailing along the spines of books that lined the shelves, ancient religious texts alongside modern works of philosophy and science. He saw how his own story, powerful as it was just one thread in a vast tapestry of spiritual awakening. And yet, it was a thread that had helped to bind this community together, to create a space where others could find the courage to share their own truths. As the last of the visitors began to trickle out into the night, Amir found himself alone in the main hall. He spoke with a young man struggling to reconcile his sexuality with his faith, offering not judgment but compassion and a broader perspective on divine love. He listened as a woman shared her own near-death experience, her words resonating deeply with his own journey. In each interaction, Amir was reminded of the incredible diversity of human experience and the myriad paths that lead to the divine. It was about creating a space where people felt safe to question, to explore, to challenge their own assumptions and those of others. In doing so, they were collectively weaving a tapestry of understanding far richer and more nuanced than any single perspective could provide. As the evening wore on, Amir found himself drawn into conversation after conversation.
Amir turned to see a group engaged in a lively debate about the nature of free will and divine predestination. What might have once devolved into a heated argument was instead a joyous exploration of ideas, each participant The others, this, Amir realized, was the true miracle of their work. It wasn't just about sharing his own experience or promoting a particular interpretation of Islam.
"Do you remember," Yusuf said softly, "when we first dreamed of this place? How impossible it all seemed." Amir nodded, a lump forming in his throat as he recalled those early days of uncertainty and fear. "There were times I thought we were foolish to even try," he admitted. Yusuf's eyes twinkled with mirth. "And yet, here we are. Allah works in mysterious ways, my friend." As if to underscore Yusuf's words, a burst of laughter rang out from across the room. People who might never have crossed paths in the outside world were now bound together by a shared quest for deeper truth. He saw friendships forming across generational and cultural divides, witnessed moments of profound realization as individuals grappled with concepts that challenged everything they thought they knew. A gentle hand on his shoulder pulled Amir from his reverie. He turned to find Yusuf, his friend and co-founder, standing beside him with a knowing smile. Amir watched as a young woman, her eyes bright with newfound understanding, engaged in deep conversation with an elderly man whose traditional garb belied his openness to new ideas. Nearby, a group of students huddled around a table, poring over ancient texts and modern interpretations alike, their animated discussion a symphony of intellectual and spiritual exploration. As he moved through the room, Amir was struck by the palpable sense of community that had blossomed here. Yet, as he gazed upon the diverse gathering of souls before him, each on their own quest for truth and meaning, he felt a profound sense of purpose that transcended all the hardships he had endured. The center had become more than just a physical space. It was a living, breathing testament to the power of spiritual awakening, and in those reflections, he found the ongoing miracle of spiritual transformation, a testament to the enduring power of love to heal, unite, and illuminate the true nature of the divine. As the warmth in Amir's chest radiated outward, he found himself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. The path had been far from easy, fraught with challenges that had tested his resolve and faith in ways he could never have imagined. As the sun set on another day of sharing, learning, and growing, Amir felt a familiar warmth in his chest, the same feeling he had experienced in the presence of the divine light. He smiled, knowing that his work was far from over, but feeling profoundly grateful for the path that had led him here. In the faces of those around him, in their questions, their doubts, and their moments of awakening, he saw reflections of his own journey. The Allah he had encountered was not the property of any one religion or tradition, but the source of all love, all life, all existence. And in that realization, he had found a mission worthy of a lifetime, to help others glimpse that same truth, to heal the spiritual poverty that afflicts so many, and to foster a world where divine justice is understood as the ultimate expression of love. He had witnessed the true face of Allah, and in sharing that vision, he had helped to awaken the divine spark in others. The journey had been challenging, filled with loss and opposition, but it had led to a place of profound peace and purpose. In the end, Amir understood that his experience had not been about leaving his faith behind, but about rediscovering its deepest, most universal truths. But more importantly, it had set him on a path of service, allowing him to be a bridge between worlds, a voice for those who yearned for a more loving and inclusive expression of faith. As the call to prayer sounded from a nearby mosque, mingling with the sounds of meditation bells from the center, Amir closed his eyes and offered a silent prayer of thanks. As he looked out over the diverse group of people gathered at the center, young and old, traditionalists and progressives, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He realized that his near-death experience had been both an end and a beginning. It had ended his old understanding of faith and opened the door to a new, more expansive vision of spirituality. The concept of divine justice was being re-examined and reinterpreted, shifting from a paradigm of reward and punishment to one of growth, learning, and the ultimate reunion of all souls with the divine source. Amir's life had come full circle. The spiritual emptiness that had once plagued him had been filled not just for himself, but for countless others who had found hope and healing through his example. Amir, now with streaks of gray in his beard, continued to share his story and his vision of a more inclusive and loving expression of faith. He never claimed to have all the answers, but rather encouraged each individual to embark on their own journey of spiritual discovery. The transformation that had begun with one man's near-death experience had blossomed into a movement that was slowly but surely changing the face of Islam in their community and beyond. They discovered a rich history of spiritual experiences similar to Amir's, recorded by Sufi masters and other mystics throughout Islamic history. This scholarly validation lent credibility to Amir's message and opened the door for more mainstream acceptance. As the years passed, the center evolved into a beacon of progressive Islamic thought, attracting visitors from around the world. He met criticism with compassion, responding to angry accusations with invitations for dialogue and understanding. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the tide began to turn. A pivotal moment came when a group of young religious scholars, intrigued by the ideas being discussed at the center, decided to engage in a serious study of mystical and esoteric traditions within Islam. The controversy reached a fever pitch, with heated debates in mosques, on social media, and in the local press. Amir found himself at the center of a storm, alternately praised as a visionary and condemned as a dangerous influence. Through it all, Amir remained steadfast in his conviction, anchored by the memory of the all-encompassing love he had experienced during his near-death encounter. They found an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of the city and, with the help of volunteers from their growing community, transformed it into a welcoming space for prayer, meditation, and discussion. The opening of the center marked a turning point. It was no longer possible for the traditional religious establishment to ignore or dismiss what was happening. A sense of liberation and joy permeated these gatherings, as individuals felt free to explore their spirituality without fear of condemnation. As the movement grew, Amir and Yusuf decided to establish a more formal center for spiritual exploration and interfaith dialogue. True divine justice is not about rewards and punishments, but about guiding each soul back to an awareness of its own divine nature. These words resonated deeply with many who had struggled to reconcile the loving God they felt in their hearts with the often harsh and judgmental deity portrayed in traditional teachings. People began to share their own stories of spiritual experiences that had been dismissed or suppressed by religious authorities. He spoke openly about his near-death experience, using it as a starting point to explore deeper truths about the nature of God and the purpose of human existence. The Allah I encountered, Amir would often say, is not a deity of fear and punishment, but a source of unconditional love and acceptance. There were calls for their excommunication, threats of violence, and attempts to shut down their meetings. Despite the opposition, or perhaps because of it, the movement continued to gain momentum. Amir found himself thrust into the role of a spiritual leader, a position he had never sought but now embraced with humility and dedication. There were young Muslims grappling with doubts about their faith, older individuals who had long felt a disconnect between religious teachings and their own inner experiences, and even some non-Muslims drawn by the message of universal love and acceptance. As the group grew, so did the backlash from the more conservative elements of the community. Amir and Yusuf were branded as heretics, led astray by Western influences and New Age philosophies. They met in living rooms and community centers, sharing experiences and exploring how to integrate their expanded spiritual understanding with their cultural and religious heritage. Word of these gatherings spread, attracting a diverse group of seekers. There are many of us who have glimpsed a truth beyond the confines of traditional doctrine. We have been waiting for someone like you to help us build a bridge between the old ways and a new understanding. Inspired by this connection, Amir and Yusuf began to organize small, informal gatherings for people who were seeking a more inclusive and love-centered approach to Islam. It was at one of these gatherings that he met Yusuf, a former imam who had undergone a similar spiritual transformation. Yusuf listened with rapt attention as Amir shared his near-death experience and the profound shift in his understanding of Allah and divine justice. When Amir finished speaking, Yusuf's eyes were shining with unshed tears. "Brother," Yusuf said, clasping Amir's hand, "you are not alone." This self-imposed exile was painful, but Amir found solace in the unshakable certainty of what he had experienced. As he navigated this new phase of his life, Amir began to seek out others who might be open to a different perspective on spirituality. He started attending interfaith dialogues and meditation groups, seeking connections with people who were asking the same deep questions that now preoccupied him. As he spoke, Amir felt the weight of disapproving gazes upon him. In that moment, he realized that he could no longer pretend to be the man he once was. With a heavy heart, but a spirit lightened by truth, Amir made the difficult decision to step back from his prominent role in the community. He resigned from his positions on religious committees and withdrew from social circles that no longer felt authentic to his new understanding. His business associates, uncomfortable with his new perspectives, began to distance themselves. Longtime friends whispered behind his back, speculating about what could have caused such a drastic change in a man they thought they knew. The turning point came during a Friday sermon at the local mosque. The imam, without naming names, spoke passionately about the dangers of straying from the true path, of being led astray by false visions and corrupt ideas. He realized that his words sounded like blasphemy to ears accustomed to traditional teachings. With a heavy heart, Amir fell silent, understanding that this journey of understanding was one he might have to walk alone. As weeks turned into months, Amir's reputation in the community began to shift. Where once he had been held up as an example of piety, now he was viewed with suspicion and concern. "What's happened to you?" Amir took his wife's hand, searching for words to explain the inexplicable. "Fatima, my love," he began, "I haven't lost my faith. If anything, I've found it in a deeper, truer form than I ever knew existed. I've seen the face of Allah, and it's not what we've been taught. It's so much more." But as he tried to describe his experience, he saw confusion and fear creep into Fatima's eyes. Where once he had been strict about observing every minute detail of religious law, he now seemed to focus more on acts of kindness and compassion. He spent less time at the mosque and more time volunteering at local charities, engaging with people of all faiths and backgrounds. "Amir," Fatima said one evening, her voice tinged with worry, "people are talking. They say you've changed, that you're neglecting your duties. Some even whisper that you've lost your faith." As Amir recovered and returned to his daily life, he found himself viewing the world through new eyes. The rigid structures and rules that had once given his life meaning now felt constricting. He still felt a deep connection to his faith, but it was a faith transformed, one based on love and unity rather than fear and separation. This shift did not go unnoticed by those around him. His wife, Fatima, watched with growing concern as Amir's behavior changed. "But we must be careful not to let such fantasies lead us astray from the true path." Amir felt a pang of frustration at the imam's dismissal. How could he make them understand that what he had experienced was not a fantasy, or a stress-induced hallucination, but a truth more real than anything he had ever known. He realized with a sinking heart that sharing his newfound understanding would not be as simple as he had hoped. The words stuck in his throat as he tried to articulate the profound love and acceptance he had experienced. When he tentatively shared a glimpse of his experience with the local imam, he was met with skepticism and concern. "My son," the imam said gravely, "you have been through a great ordeal. It is natural for the mind to conjure comforting visions in times of extreme stress. Friends, business associates, and religious leaders came to offer prayers and words of encouragement. Many saw his survival as a clear sign of Allah's favor, a reward for his years of devout observance. But as Amir listened to their well-meaning words, he felt a growing sense of disconnect. How could he explain to these people, who had known him as a paragon of traditional Islamic virtue, that his entire understanding of faith had been turned upside down? In the days that followed, as Amir's body slowly healed from the trauma of the accident, he found himself grappling with the implications of his near-death experience. The spiritual emptiness that had plagued him before was gone, replaced by a deep sense of connection to something greater than himself. Yet this newfound peace came with its own set of challenges. As news of Amir's miraculous survival spread through the community, well-wishers flocked to his hospital room. The stark fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell were a jarring contrast to the transcendent experience he had just left behind. As his family crowded around his bed, tears of joy streaming down their faces, Amir struggled to reconcile the profound shift in his understanding of reality with the familiar world he had returned to. The divine presence seemed to communicate to him, without words, that it was not yet his time to remain in this realm of pure spirit. With a mixture of reluctance and newfound purpose, Amir felt himself being drawn back to the physical world. With a gasp, Amir's eyes flew open. He found himself in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and concerned faces. He saw how every action, every thought, rippled out to affect the entire universe in ways he had never imagined. The artificial boundaries between religions, cultures, and even between life and death seemed to blur and fade away in the light of this greater truth. Just as Amir felt he was on the verge of grasping some fundamental truth about existence, he felt a gentle but insistent tugging. The concept of divine justice, which he had always understood as a system of rewards and punishments, revealed itself to be something far more nuanced and merciful. He saw that true justice was not about retribution, but about growth, understanding, and the ultimate reunion of all souls with the source of divine love. In what felt like both an eternity and a fleeting moment, Amir was shown visions of the interconnectedness of all creation. He realized with startling clarity that the Allah he had always envisioned, a cosmic judge keeping a meticulous tally of good deeds and transgressions, was a limited, human construct that paled in comparison to the reality before him. As he basked in this divine presence, Amir felt a lifetime of questions and doubts dissolve. In the presence of this all-encompassing love, Amir felt the weight of his earthly concerns fall away. The strict rules and regulations that had governed his life, the fear of divine retribution that had kept him on the straight and narrow path, all of it seemed trivial in the face of this profound connection to the divine. The light enveloped him, and in that moment, Amir experienced a revelation that would shatter every preconception he had ever held about his faith. He found himself face to face with a presence that he instinctively knew to be Allah, yet this divine being bore little resemblance to the stern, unyielding deity he had worshipped all his life. Instead, Amir was overwhelmed by an indescribable sense of compassion and unconditional love. As Amir marveled at this strange new state of being, he became aware of a presence, a light that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was not the harsh, judgmental light he had always imagined would greet him in the afterlife, but a warm, inviting glow that seemed to pulse with love and understanding. Drawn to this radiance, Amir felt himself moving towards it, leaving behind the chaotic scene of the accident and all his earthly concerns. As his physical body lay broken and unconscious in the wreckage of his car, Amir found himself floating above the scene, watching with detached fascination as paramedics worked frantically to save his life. A profound sense of peace washed over him, unlike anything he had ever felt before. Gone was the nagging emptiness that had plagued him for so long, replaced by a serene acceptance of whatever was to come. On a sweltering summer day, as he was driving to an important business meeting, a truck veered suddenly into his lane. In a heartbeat, Amir's world exploded into a cacophony of screeching tires and shattering glass. The last thing he remembered was a blinding flash of light before everything went dark. What followed was an experience that defied everything Amir had ever known or believed. He attended Friday prayers at the mosque, listening to the imam's sermons with an outward appearance of rapt attention, all the while feeling a growing disconnect between the words he heard and the turmoil in his soul. The concept of divine justice, once a comforting certainty in his life, began to feel hollow and unsatisfying. It was during this period of quiet crisis that fate intervened in a way that would forever alter the course of Amir's life. How could he feel so adrift when his anchor to the divine seemed so secure? As the days passed, this internal struggle intensified. Amir found himself going through the motions of his daily prayers, his lips forming the familiar words while his heart remained distant. Amir found himself grappling with an inexplicable sense of emptiness, a void that neither his strict adherence to religious practices nor his worldly success could fill. This feeling of spiritual poverty gnawed at him, a persistent whisper in the back of his mind that something was missing from his life. The notion of lost faith was alien to him. After all, he followed every tenet of Islam with unwavering dedication. Amir's life was a testament to devotion, his days punctuated by the rhythmic prostrations of Salah and the careful observance of religious law. From the outside, he appeared to be the very image of a blessed and contented Muslim. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect existence, a quiet turmoil was brewing. I witnessed the true face of Allah during my NDE, and He is not what we think. You may think you know what the Muslim faith is all about, but this near-death experience changed everything. Amir. He was known throughout the community as a pillar of faith, a successful businessman whose material wealth was seen as a clear sign of Allah's favor.